You are now live on YouTube.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting on September 28th, 2021 of the Ethics and Campaign Review Board to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Miller,
Here.
Member Amer, Judy, you're muted. Member Biederman,
I'm here.
Thank you.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I was muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. Member Kovnat. Member Kovnat. And you're muted as well. Member Lujan.
She is excused. She has a legislative committee meeting and will try to join as soon as possible, if possible.
Thank you. And Member Martinez.
She is also excused for a prior commitment.
Okay, so the only one we need is Member Kovnat, and I see that she is here. So should I count her in? Because here, I think she's muted.
Yeah, let's give her 1 second. I saw her connection before. Ms. Kovnat, if you can hear us and unmute yourself, please let us know that you're there. Looks like she disconnected, so let's give her just a minute. I know she was there before.
We do need her for a quorum, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Miller, it appears she is having a connection. I keep admitting her, but then her connection keeps getting disrupted. So,
Well, let's give it a couple tries here and see what we
yeah,
can do.
absolutely. I just wanted you to know that she is popping in and out. So we'll keep trying to get her connected on her end.
And Christine, is there an option for just calling in, or is that something that might be easier to make the connection?
Yes, there is. She could call in if that is.
Okay.
I believe Member Amer is on a phone call in as well.
No, I'm on my computer, but previously I have called in.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Hi, Ruth, are you there and can you hear us?
In order to call in, though, you need the Zoom app on your phone. At least that's how I did it.
Hi, Ruth, are you there and can you hear us? Looks like it's not working so well. Let me see if I can text her and and just see if she can call in.
Oh, Chair Miller, it looks like she connected. Her video just turned on.
Oh, good.
Her video was on before though.
Ruth, can you, it looks like you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. If you can disconnect your other audio, maybe that'll help with the feedback.
Okay, can you hear me now
Yeah, perfect.
on the
Yeah.
phone? I
Yes,
can't hear you.
Okay, good.
she can or she cannot hear us. You can't hear
can?
us, Ruth.
I can't hear you. I've been removed from the meeting.
Well, sorry, Ruth, I removed your extra account because this one was connected. Do you want to? Which account would you like to join with, Ruth?
I truly do not know what to do. I've been removed from the meeting.
We can see you. You can't hear us though.
I'm going to start all over.
Chair Miller, I see that member Lujan is on as well.
I'm unable to rejoin the meeting, my computer tells me.
Ms. Lujan, are you there?
I think she's on the phone.
I'll
Wait.
try.
Okay, I just texted Ruth to see if she can just try the call in, see if that works. My apologies to everybody for our technical difficulties here. I guess this is the times we're in, unfortunately. Ms. Lujan, are you there?
I am on. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Is that sufficient for roll call or? you
Yes,
need- okay.
member Lujan, for roll call, you are present?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Chair, with member Lujan, there is a quorum present.
Okay, let's go ahead with some of the preliminary matters while Ruth tries to join. And hopefully we can get that going. And if we need to stop briefly, we will. Of course, I'd rather have everybody participating who's here if possible, so. Okay, going to item 3, approval of the agenda. The members have received the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion approved by Ms. Amer, second by Ms. Lujan. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, member Amer,
Yes.
member Biederman,
Yes,
and member Luhan.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can you hear me now? I can hear you. I'm on the phone.
Yeah, we can hear you fine, Ruth. That's perfect.
Okay, I can't see anybody, but I'm here.
Okay,
on the
good.
phone.
That will work. We just approved the agenda and we're going on to item 4, approval of the minutes of our
Great.
last meeting on September 9th, 2021. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move that. Paul Biederman, I'll move it.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion approved by Mr. Biederman, seconded by Ms. Amer. Can I have a roll call vote on the?
May I just ask for one amendment? Again, a very small one, the middle of page 13 and the third paragraph. And it was a wonderful job and very lengthy minutes. This is the only thing I saw. The word injunction was replaced accidentally by injection in the third paragraph in the middle of 13. That's,
Thank you.
that might confuse the reader. So
Thank you.
Okay, the motion has been made to approve the minutes with that amendment. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, member Amer,
Yes.
member Biederman,
yes,
member Kovnat,
Yes,
member Luhan.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Going into item 5 on the agenda. This is discussion and possible action on complaint number 2021-3.
point of order, Mr. Chair. I think on that complaint, there's been a motion made to disqualify me. I assume that you'll take that up before taking up the complaint, and I should recuse myself from that conversation.
Okay, you're talking about recusing yourself from the discussion of the motion to disqualify you, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, let's do this. I'll just explain a little bit of background on the complaint and then hit the two sort of collateral issues, the motions that were attached to the complaint, and we can resolve any lingering questions on conflict without, and I don't think it's maybe this is a question, but Ruth, I think your input on the conflict question is important. So I know you've submitted an affidavit, but I don't know that you need to recuse yourself from a discussion of whether you should recuse yourself or not.
Mr. Chair.
I heard somebody, I don't know who
Mr. Chair,
that,
this is Virgil Vigil.
okay?
I'd like to what I'd like to do is we submitted that she be recused, and we're retracting that request.
Okay, I appreciate that, and thank you for letting us know.
But we'd like to continue with Ms. Martinez though.
Got it. Okay, let's, thank you for that. That helps our discussion. I do feel the need to touch on it briefly in spite of your withdrawal of that. But let's, like I said, let me explain what we're here for today and then touch on the two conflict issues before we get into the substance, okay? Like I said, this is the board's here to consider complaint number 2021-3. It is a complaint filed by Mr. Virgil Vigil and Gilbert Romero. The respondents are Mayor Alan Weber and the Alan Weber for Mayor or Alan Weber for Santa Fe campaign. The complaint alleges 3 violations. First, the campaign email related to a City of Santa Fe cool down event violated city ordinance section 1-7.7 E and H. Subsection E prohibits the misuse of city resources. Subsection H prohibits improper political campaigning. The second allegation is that respondents have made public comments consisting of bullying in violation of ordinance 1-7.7 K, which prohibits workplace bullying by governing body members. Third, that by engaging the law firm of Eagle, Furlick, Martinez, and Harwood, the respondents violated city charter section 2.01 regarding a code of ethics and city ordinance 1-7.7 M procedures regarding conflicts of interest and 1-7.7 C representation of private interests. Now, the two, what I guess I'd call sort of collateral motions for disqualification attached to the complaint. One, they both alleged conflicts of interest by 2 board members. The first is that member Christine Martinez has a conflict of interest because of her law firm's representation of the respondent. Second is that member Ruth Kavanagh has a conflict of interest because of alleged campaign contributions. Taking the second first, we've heard from Mr. V. Hill that the complainants withdraw that allegation against Ms. Kavanagh. I would just like to say that the board addressed this very allegation of conflict of interest at the last meeting. Heard from Ms. Kavanagh that she has not made any contributions to Alan Weber, and the board found that there was not a conflict of interest and proceeded with Ms. Kavanagh's participation. Given that prior consideration of the conflict and Mr. V. Hill's withdrawal of the allegations alleging a conflict, I don't think there's anything further for the board to do on this motion / allegation, but it's fairly, it's a serious matter. And so I want to make sure the board has an opportunity to discuss it and do anything about it that they would like to. Is there any comment from the board? Okay, I'm not seeing any comment. I would also note that Ms. Kavanagh submitted an affidavit of sworn testimony that she has not made a contribution to the campaign as alleged in the complaint. So there appears to be no basis in fact to that allegation, and we'll move on. The second alleged conflict involved member Christine Martinez. She's excused from today's meeting because of a prior commitment. She also has addressed this conflict before. She brought it of her own volition to the board and noted that there was a conflict of interest and recused herself from any consideration of a matter involving Mayor Weber or his campaign. She has also indicated that if she were here today, she would recuse herself again and not take any action in connection with this complaint. She has done what is appropriate in circumstances of a conflict of interest. Conflicts of interest arise from time to time, and it's up to public officials and board members included to be aware of them and note them and bring them to the attention of the board and recuse themselves when appropriate. That's exactly what Ms. Martinez did here. I don't know that the board needs to address this motion or these allegations any further either, but I open it up to the board for discussion and comment.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. V. Hill,
V. Hill.
I'm asking for board discussion on this issue at the moment.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Biederman. I just moved that this is moot. The matter is moot because we are dealing with this today, and Ms. Martinez is not here. So there's simply no issue anymore. If we were to resolve this at a later time, it might come up again, but she's already indicated she would recuse herself again. So I don't really see what the problem is.
Okay. Mr. Biederman, is that in the form of a motion or just a comment on that we should move on to the substance of the complaint?
I would say we should dismiss that part of the complaint as moot.
Okay, that's a motion to dismiss that part of the complaint as moot.
I would second that.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Amer. Is there any further discussion among the board on that motion? Okay, seeing none. Mr. V. Hill, I'll give you an opportunity to address your complaint, but on this motion, we'll just go ahead and proceed. Can I have a roll call vote on the motion, please?
Yes, member Amer,
Yes.
member Biederman,
Yes?
member Kovnat,
Yes.
member Lujan.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion has been approved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now returning to the substance of complaint 2021-3. I see some hands up. Let's give me just a minute to get through this and then we'll get to the parties. Okay, both parties are trying to get my attention and I'll just try to keep a little process here. The complaint was submitted on or around September 7th, 2021. The respondents were notified of the complaint. The respondents were given a time period in which to submit a written response, and they did so. That's those. So the complaint and the response are the documents in the record before the board. This is getting repetitive this summer, but just for everyone's benefit, I'll outline what we are here to do today. And that is the first step of the ECRB process when we receive a complaint is to determine the legal sufficiency of the complaint. Specifically, whether the complaint on its face states with particularity legally sufficient facts, which if true, show probable cause to believe there is a violation of the Code of Ethics, the Campaign Code, or the Public Campaign Finance Code. So the board will dismiss the complaint if it was filed too late, does not state a violation, is frivolous, or was filed solely to harass or intimidate, or if the board lacks jurisdiction for the complaint. If the board dismisses the complaint, the matter is resolved. If the board does not dismiss the complaint, we will proceed to a hearing and we will have a discussion about those procedures and scheduling a hearing if necessary. So at this point, or first they'll hear from the board, and then we'll give an opportunity to the complainant first, Mr. V. Hill and Mr. Romero.
Excuse me, Chairman Miller.
Yes.
I was just wondering, do we go through the probable cause determination 3 times for each 3 of the violations?
I think it could be handled either way. If the board chooses to address and make a separate motion on each count, say each alleged violation, that's fine. Or if all 3 could be handled at once, that might work too. But let's see how the discussion goes. So first, Mr. V. Hill, you're here on behalf of the complainant. Is there anyone else here representing the complainant? And I'm thinking of Mr. Romero, who is also named on the complaint. Or Mr. Romero, are you here? Okay, and Mr. V. Hill, are you speaking on behalf of the complainants? Thank you very much. I saw you nodding your head. And Ms. Furlick, I saw you raising your hand. Are you here on behalf of the respondents?
I am, but I do have 2 very brief preliminary matters.
Okay, let me hear from the board, see if there's any initial discussion, and then we'll go to preliminary matters. Is there any comment or discussion from the board before we hear from the parties? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Ms. Furlick, tell us about your preliminary matters.
Mr. Commissioner, member, or Mr. Chair, members of the commission, two brief preliminary matters. One involves conflict, and that is, and I do not intend to pile on to this idea of asking commissioners to recuse themselves, but I do understand that Commissioner Lujan is the cousin of Virgil Vigil. I believe that Commissioner Lujan would have disclosed this fact if true and recused herself. So I'm hoping the commissioner can simply clear this up on whether or not they are cousins and whether or not she, if they are, is recusing herself. And the second issue is a caption correction in our response.
Okay, let's take
Mr. Chair.
let's take those in turn. Ms. Lujan, if you would like to address that, the issue, I'd be happy to hear from you. I'd
Sure.
also be happy to hear from the city whether that raises any issue of a conflict that the board should discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this. Yes, in fact, I am related to Mr. Vigil, and I don't feel like this is a conflict of me making a clear decision and deliberating on an issue, but if the board so sees that this is a conflict of interest, then I'm happy to have that conversation, but by no means do I believe that it would impair my judgment or lead me in any way to have any kind of bias in my decision making. I also sit as a state legislature, state representative, and have to encounter many decision making issues. And being a native Santa Fean, native New Mexican, for many generations, I have many cousins and relations and have to make lots of decisions and vote on laws. So I do not feel like it would change my way of making my decisions. And I do apologize for not disclosing that. I didn't even consider that we are, 3 times maybe removed, 4 times removed as relations. Thank you, Madam Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Lujan. So just to, okay, I see a comment from Mr. Biederman.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly think we ought to pay attention to these kinds of issues. In this particular case, looking at the city code definitions at 1-7.5, conflict of interest does include concern about any member of a family. I'm reading it very quickly, so I may miss something, but any family member as creating a conflict of interest for a city official doing official business. However, family is defined as members of the individual's household, his or her children, stepchildren, brothers, sisters, parents, step-parents, domestic partner, and all persons claimed as dependents on the individual's latest federal income tax return. So at least within the definition of the city's ethics code, I believe this well exceeds that limitation. The Governmental Conduct Act I'm familiar with, and it provides for a 3rd degree of consanguinity or affinity as the limit, and cousins are outside that. And this sounds like it's not even a first cousin, if I'm understanding Ms. Lujan correctly. So I would just suggest that we not worry about this if that's okay.
Okay, I heard the same thing from Ms. Lujan, that it's cousin and maybe 3 or 4 degrees removed. Are there any other comments from the board? Ms. Furlick, I don't, maybe I'll give you a chance to based on the information you learned from Ms. Lujan, withdraw the complaint or request for action. And if not, the board will be happy to decide the issue, but it does not seem like there is an actionable conflict that would require Ms. Lujan's excusal or recusal here.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I certainly defer to Commissioner Lujan and her disclosure, and then the wisdom of the board.
Okay, well, let's do this. Then I will entertain any motion from the board. I hear from Ms. Lujan that it does not, in her opinion, it does not pose a conflict for her. And I have not heard any indication from the board that of concern that it poses a conflict that would require her excusal from this matter. And I'll just give board members one last chance to raise a concern if they have it. Otherwise, we will move on. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Ms. Furlick, and doing so before we started examining the substance of the complaint. It's the right way to handle it, to bring it to everyone's attention and deal with it early. So thank you for that. Okay. Unless the board has any discussion before we hear from the complainant, that's what I'd like to do next. I'm not seeing any raising of the hand. Ms. Furlick, do you have another?
Mr. Chair, there were two
Oh.
the second
Yes.
issue, just before
Okay.
we get started, it is my error, but I captioned the response Virgil V. Hill and Gilbert Romero, complainant versus Alan Weber, respondent. And the proper respondent is actually Alan Weber for Santa Fe. And I just wanted to acknowledge the error. It is my own, and correct the caption on the record.
Okay, thank you for that. And we will consider it corrected on your representation today. Thank you again, sorry, and thanks for bringing that up ahead of time. Okay, without further discussion, Mr. V. Hill, would you like to present the position of the complainant, please?
Good afternoon, Chairman, board members. Before my full response for the ethics complaint, I'd like to request that the board vote on a motion regarding Christina Martinez and the Martinez eGolf law firm. Per city code, quote, a governmental body member, excluding members of the governing body, shall not, during his or her term of office or within 1 year after the termination thereof, accept monetary compensation from a third party for consulting with and representing or advising the party regarding any transaction with such governing body or matter before such governing body in which he or she has had or reasonably should expect to have any influence or personal involvement in his or her capacity as a governmental body member, unquote. A governmental body member is defined as, quote, a body. A body means that the governing body and any board, commission, or committee appointed by the governing body or by the mayor with the advice and consent of the governing body. Mrs. Martinez.
Mr. V. Hill, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the board considered this matter before we even got to the complaint. And Ms. Martinez is not here and has recused herself.
Huh?
And the board decided not to
But
take
I'm
any
also,
action on that motion.
I'm also going to speak about the the law firm of eGolf.
But that was part of the motion that you had made, and the board is not addressing that any further right now.
Okay,
Okay, but
Mr. Chairman, may I?
yes, please.
Thank you. I believe this is a different motion. It's not asking for Ms. Martinez to recuse herself, but rather it's asking for the law firm, well, it's asking for a complaint against the mayor for selecting a law firm of which she was a member. I'm not saying I understand it, but I think that's the way I read it.
But I think you're talking about the third allegation in the complaint. Is that right?
I believe that's what,
Yes.
forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth, Mr. Vahil, but that's what I understand he's saying.
Okay. I understood him to be re-raising, and let's ask Mr. Vahil. I'm sorry if I misunderstood you. I thought you to be addressing the motion regarding
yeah, well,
conflict with Ms. Martinez, and that's what I'm saying the board has addressed. If you're talking about the third part of your complaint, then that's different.
yes, it's different. I understand that Mrs. Martinez works for the eGolf law firm, and that's what we're complaining about is the eGolf law firm also.
Okay, then, all right, if you're going first to the violation number 3 alleged in your complaint, then
No, I'm
please
not.
do so. If you're going to the motion attached to the end of the complaint, then the board has addressed it.
Okay, let's continue.
Okay. So on the substance of the complaint, the 3 alleged violations, please make your presentation to the board if you would like.
We'll try to keep this as short as possible. Hopefully, we have covered everything we needed to in the written complaint that you have. Our first issue is the way the mayor and his team have arrived to pull the wool over the public's eyes. His defense amount to him trying to negate any responsibility by saying he was not acting officially as mayor when these infractions were committed. The response has everything from trying to place the fault on his campaign staff, and himself personally. Basically, any trick he and the Speaker of the House can think of to say he was not working in his official capacity. We do not agree with this. Just as the mayor tried to force the city police chief to take responsibility for his failure to stop the riots on the plaza, he is once again doing the same with this response. He is the head of the city, and the buck stops with him. The police chief answers to him, and so does his campaign and his campaign staff. Every one of these violations were done at his direction or on his behalf, and the board shall see each of these violations as such. These ethic rules are in place to protect the public. A public official like the mayor should err on the side of scrupulous ethics in order to protect the public. How can the public distinguish between the mayor and the mayor as a candidate without believing that the machinery of government is being perverted by the mayor? The lawyers represent the mayor, and the lawyers with a standing conflict of ethics in the commission. The essence of government ethics is not technical mistakes. It is a fundamental sense of trust that the public places in its leaders. Fundamentally, how does a voter know that Mrs. Martinez stood anything but for her client? How does a voter know that there is a difference between the mayor and the mayor as a candidate? I don't think the public can. Neither can the employees of the city that were invited to help the mayor win his election. Our ethic rules are not a ceiling, but a floor. I respectfully request that the mayor, as candidate Weber, should be held accountable by this board. The mayor is not above the law as he attempts to be. And this is a common thing for him. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Vigil. Ms. Furlick for the respondent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. First, I want to take a step back to give everyone the lay of the land here, because I think untangling the complaint is important. This appears, as Mr. Vigil expressed, to be a political disagreement, but it is not a proper complaint. First, the campaign is not subject to the city's ethics code. The campaign is subject to the campaign code and the public campaign finance code. And the second is only for candidates that are using public financing, so it's not relevant here. But it's worth highlighting that the complaint doesn't state a single violation of the campaign code. And so this alone justifies a complete dismissal of the respondent's complaint against the campaign. And really no further discussion is warranted on this, but I know the commission might want to hear a little more, so I will address those things. And like I clarified as a preliminary issue, I represent the campaign, and complainants that, as Mr. Biederman pointed out at a prior meeting, that are lay folks don't often have a grasp on proper entity names or which standards apply to which people or entities. So because I think these issues were conflated, we didn't want to leave room for liability. So we respond for both Mayor Weber and the campaign. We did reach out to the city early on, the city attorney's office, and we didn't hear back on whether they were representing the mayor in this. So it is a little bit confusing. I don't know if someone from the city is here, so I am going to address both as we did in our response. So on count one essentially accuses both the campaign and the mayor of violating the city's ethics code. And the basis cited for this is that the campaign sent an email promoting a pre-existing public event. So as it pertains to the campaign, the complaint should be dismissed because, as I stated, the ethics code doesn't apply to campaigns, and all the violations in the complaint are raised under the ethics code. And a little more on that, but the ethics code basically exists, as all of you know, to adopt standards of behavior for public officials and employees of the city. And every provision of the ethics code cited limits the standards of behavior to municipal public officials or public employees. The campaign is not any of those things. That term is defined in Section 1-7.5, which Commissioner Biederman, read from at the outset. As it pertains to the mayor, the complaint does not state any facts that the mayor acted improperly in his official capacity. Private entities, like campaigns, are absolutely entitled to promote public events and public programs. And a campaign entity promoting a taxpayer-funded event should not create liability for elected officials under the campaign code. And I think the second thing I'll say about that is that it's in the public interest for more people to take advantage of public events. And when campaigns or any private entity promotes public events, this does help the city or whatever local governmental body fulfill its mission of doing things in the public interest. And I really don't want to pick on Commissioner Lujan here, but she's the only elected official sitting on this board. And I'm not asking for recusal or anything like that. But I just want to point out that there are, can I share my screen?
Christine, is that possible? I'm not sure we can give administrative, I don't know that that's possible or not.
Okay.
Yes, it is, and the option is available, Ms. Furlick, if you would like. If it's not working, let me know.
So I think you have to make me the host, Christine. I'm not, or enable screen sharing, or
Screen sharing is enabled, so will you let me know if you try and it doesn't? If not, I can make you a co-host, or I can update the settings.
And Mr. Chair, excuse me, since I'm just here on phone, if you can describe, if the screen share can be described in some detail, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
not sure that it wants to let me.
So Ms. Furlick, if you hit share screen, is it telling you that it's disabled?
It sure is. And I'm pretty, I would say an 8 out of 10 Zoom user.
Sure.
So normally I
worries.
don't have issues with sharing my screen.
Okay, it's showing it's enabled on my end, but let me go ahead and just make you a co-host so there's no issues.
That would be great. And if it doesn't work, I'll just describe it, because it's really just making the point about what campaigns so often do to promote public events all over the state and all over the country.
Great, Ms. Furlick, you are a co-host, so if you would like to try to screen share.
Thank you so much. Nope. Okay. Well, so the point is, and I just use this as an example, not at all as a criticism, and I can send this to Ms. Bustos for consideration when the commission is in executive session. But on the Facebook page for Representative Tara Lujan for New Mexico House District 48, and there are at least 5 examples that we've found this year of Representative Lujan promoting a Hondo Fire Station 2 event for Restore Our Earth. Thank you, commissioners, incredible volunteers, and posting photographs of Representative Lujan, in this case, Commissioner Lujan, with fire officials and things like that. She also often posts press releases that have been issued by Santa Fe County, the state of New Mexico. These are not only informational, but they are part of educating a voter base. So on the mayor in count 1, there are no facts concerning the behavior of the mayor or his office, and therefore the complaint fails. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, do you want me to pause for questions here or move on to count 2 and 3?
Since we're at a natural pause and I see a question from Ms. Lujan, let's go ahead and take her question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Furlick, for those comments and that information that you have given, and also recognizing me as the only elected official on this board. I'd also like to say I think I'm the only person on this board that has run elections as well. And in understanding a political position and working in a political, and differentiating that from working in an official capacity. And when we are trying to differentiate those issues, we have to look at how funds, money are spent, and if there are funds and money involved. in helping us in those differing roles that we have as elected and also as a candidate when we are a candidate. So I think there's a timeline of that also is in our election code and revealing election cycles as well, and helping us determine and understand how we look and how we are moving and interrelating into those roles. So I've worked on a federal campaign, I've worked on state campaigns, and I've worked on local campaigns. And as we're looking, and we have some different codes, different ethics codes as well, through those different entities. So in the federal campaign, which I know quite well in our ethics code for those, there are very clear distinctions and how you are to use and act in those roles. You referred to and I'm not trying to take up too much time, but I feel since I've been singled out here that and for you to understand my position and the post and using a media post, a multimedia post like I do, I am acting and using it on my, my 4-page or political page is in an informative role, but I am not using my email or other resources that are paid where money is involved. So that's where I'm making the distinction and differentiating with those two things. And when in my official role, and I'm working as a state legislature at the state capitol, I am not to engage in campaigning of any sort and accepting in promoting myself as a candidate. So there are clear distinctions in our roles, and I would acknowledge too that perhaps in our city ethics code that we don't quite address a lot of that, but we do have a government conduct act that does address some of this, and we do have a state ethics board that also exists when we are looking for clearer answers, when we are accused of things as well. So that's where I will say there are not enough clear distinctions in our city ethics code on this, but there are other ethic codes that do really delineate those roles, and I think that perhaps I think we need to look at those as well. But as a matter of fact, for myself, I think that when I am making decisions as a candidate or as an official, I am looking at how money is being spent and how I'm using and working within those roles. And through a social media platform, there is no exchange of that type of money or monetary expense. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak. I think that some things have been brought up today, and I respect those issues and the comments and what is in this discussion. So I'll leave it at that. And as we get into our executive discussion and perhaps read more, but these are issues, and I think that they clearly need to be more defined and addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lujan. Ms. Furlick, if you could continue to address the complaint.
And just, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lujan, please know that I was not even commenting on, whether or not anything was appropriate, inappropriate, lawful, unlawful, just that it was an example of, what many campaigns do is to promote public events.
Thank you.
And I think to some of your points, the ethics code applies to the mayor. As the mayor, it doesn't apply to the campaign. But as to the mayor, the complaint doesn't allege that the mayor created the event to benefit his campaign. It doesn't allege that the mayor's office coordinated with the campaign. It doesn't allege taxpayer dollars were used. And so I'll leave it at that.
Chairman Miller, I tried to raise my hand, but since we went through violation 1, I would like to make a motion that the complaint does fulfill the probable cause determination regarding potential violations of 1-7.7 E and H. And I don't feel like I need to read them, but and if so that we could just deal with that at this point, since we just heard of it, and then we could go on and hear the other two violations.
Point of clarification. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, let Ms. Amer, if you would like to make a motion, of course you can, and we can wait for a second. In my my thought is that we're better off hearing from both sides all the way through, and then giving the board the chance to ask questions of Mr. Behill and Ms. Furlick before a motion is before the board.
Well, if there's a second, then we could have discussion on the motion and ask questions.
Yeah, we could. I'm just stating my preference that we deal with it later, but if there is a second, then I'll see if there's a second. Okay, I'm not seeing a second at this time, but obviously that's the core question that we'll get to. So we'll get to it in just a little bit. Ms. Furlick, could you please continue?
Sure, but on Mr. Chair, Commissioner Amer, on that particular motion, I mean, I would ask the board to be, concerned with who the parties are here in terms of what section of what ordinance applies. And the ethics code is not applicable to the campaign. It is only public employees and public officials. And there has been absolutely no articulation of any violation of a campaign code. And I will say that based on the precedent I think this board has set, that's something that this board should be consistent with. I mean, the last complaint, which alleged that a 501c3 was making expenditures advocating for the defeat of a candidate without being required to disclose donors, was dismissed, and the violation was clear and clearly cited. And it seems because the board found it wasn't part of their primary purpose, the board dismissed because the campaign referenced the section of the correct ordinance, but didn't allege a violation of such. And so this board has really narrowed its focus, as it should. It's a quasi-judicial body that does need to pay attention to the law and what the applicable law is compared to a complaint that has been put forward. So on
okay, we're getting off track. We need to have an
I
open
would only
discussion.
like to state that the complaint on its face alleges a complaint against two separate entities, Mayor Alan Weber and Mayor Alan Weber for Mayor campaign. So there are two entities alleged there.
Okay,
correct,
so
but no set of facts related to the mayor. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Let's get through the parties' basic presentations, and then we can each have an opportunity to question them and discuss amongst the board. So let's go ahead and just finish the presentation from Ms. Furlick. And I think you've covered count one. If you could proceed to count two and count three.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Count two concerns an allegation that the mayor and a campaign spokesperson released comments that would violate the ethics code. The ethics code, by its plain language, limits the statements to those that occur in a workplace context and by a public official or employee. So again, it doesn't apply to the campaign, and the statements that are at the subject here, which are found in Exhibit 1 of the respondents, the respondent's response, are campaign emails. And this is not a public workplace. And the statements were made by the campaign and not directed at any public employee. Section 1.7.7 essentially prohibits governing body members from bullying public employees. This is the allegation here. Workplace bullying is defined as intentional behavior intended to create an abusive work environment. Again, the statements were made outside of the workplace, didn't concern the workplace. There's no evidence of any intent to create an abusive workplace. And this would not be a practical or legal application of the provision of the ethics code and should be dismissed. The mayor is permitted to opine on aspects of public life that he feels are detrimental to the city. I'm going to move on to count 3. Count 3 concerns the hiring of my firm as improper because board member Christina Martinez is part of the firm. And I think the board has addressed this, but as is proper, Ms. Martinez recused herself in each instance where my representation of a client before this body was an issue. In my practice, I work in the field of election law and have represented campaigns and public officials in various election questions and litigation. And frankly, there are not that many lawyers that practice in this area. And I am certainly one of the few in Santa Fe. And I think the accusation in count 3 is really one where the complainant is accusing this board of somehow being influenced by Ms. Martinez's association with me. And I think that each of you can fairly evaluate whether Ms. Martinez's association and corresponding recusal influences this board in any way. The ethics complaint, I think, targets the mayor's campaign for hiring me and cite to a number of sections, but fail to allege what the campaign did wrong here. I think the sections that are cited apply to the mayor's conduct during his term in office and within 1 year of serving. And the mayor has not accepted any compensation to represent any party before the city. And I don't think that that is a fact that's even at play in this complaint. I'd again like to, just ask this board to consider the last 2 complaints and the precedent that it has set for deciding these issues. So for the reasons argued today here and in the brief, I respectfully request the board dismiss the complaint against the campaign and Mayor Alan Weber. Someone from the city attorney's office may be here for Mayor Alan Weber. I am not sure, but if they are, I defer to them.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Furlick. I open it up to members of the board for discussion or questions of the representatives here today. Mr. Biederman?
Yes, if I could ask questions of Mr. Vahil. There he is. Mr. Vahil, I'm going to ask you a question about your first allegation, violation number 1. And that's the one that talks about the incident where the city was apparently sponsoring a cool down event, two such events in July at two parks. And the mayor's campaign sent out a notice, I guess by email, I believe was the only way, that encouraged people to attend that. Okay, so you understand what I'm addressing, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my question for you is this. The code tells us that a public official can't use city services, personnel, or equipment for personal benefit. And let's say that if the mayor had, in fact, somehow misused that event, that because the city paid for it and the people there were city employees, that would have violated this. What I'm asking you is, are you alleging that the mayor, in fact, at the event, did anything in the nature of campaigning, or was he just there as the mayor?
Absolutely, he had his signs over there, is what he had. And I got to remind you that the mayor works 24/7. That's his job as a mayor, and he did have signs over there.
Oh, you haven't alleged that in the complaint. That's the first I've heard of that.
Okay.
Well,
Well, I forgot.
it's a big forgetting.
Okay.
I'm concerned that the code of ethics points to the misuse of the resources, and then improper political campaigning is a second thing. I agree, by the way, with the respondent's attorney that there's no claim against the mayor's campaign because they're not subject to this code provision, but the mayor could be. And by the way, I welcome the fact that this is being raised because, as you may recall, when this first came up in the complaint of his opponent, Ms. Martinez Johnson, I wanted to proceed to the merits of the complaint so we could, and not just stop it where we did, because I wanted to I was concerned about this issue and I wanted to see whether there was a violation. I didn't have my mind made up then, and I don't quite yet have now. The second part that you've cited is improper political campaigning, that a public official, that could be the mayor, can't knowingly request another person to request any subordinate public official or employee to provide services to a political campaign, and shall not engage in political campaigning while on duty for the city, or use city supplies or funds or supplies, or facilities to benefit or assist a political campaign. Now, I don't understand how the letter or the email that the campaign apparently sent out encouraging people who are on their mailing list to attend this event, I don't understand how that violates this provision. Because what they could have said, we want you to come to visit City Hall. We want you to come to a city council meeting. They could have said any of a number of things that encourage people to attend public events. And this was a public event. So I don't understand why the email violates the provisions that you've cited in your complaint. Can you help me with that?
Okay. Well, the mayor used this as a campaign event, and he was campaigning. I don't remember when the last time the fire department went down to the south side to do this type of thing. It so happens that it happened during the campaign. It hasn't happened in the past 3 years. It was an event for him to advertise that he's running in the south side because his ratings is not very good in the south side.
All right, thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you. Any other members of the board have a question or comment?
Oh, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I only was addressing violation number 1. I have questions about the other 2 violations as well. Do you want to do all 3 at once? Or
Let's talk about one first.
Yeah, I prefer that.
And I'll just reopen that to the board. Any other questions or comments on the first claim here. Okay, not seeing any, Mr. Biederman, do you want to address the second or third?
Yes, thank you. The second violation, let me ask you first, I want to be sure, Mr. Vihil, have you said everything you wanted to tell us about the second violation? I wasn't quite, the allegation of the second violation. I wasn't quite clear if you had finished your presentation or if you were just addressing the first one when you spoke. I just want to be sure that you're being treated fairly.
Well, I still stand by the statements that you have before you.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, well, yeah, my questions on this are basically to ask you, can you explain to me how the mayor's statements that were quoted in the email, which the respondents provided us, you did not, but they sent these forms, these emails to us. How does that attack any city employee? How does that amount to bullying any city employee?
I believe these were made towards our groups and members of the city employees.
Well, which city employees?
What city employees?
Yeah, which city employees?
I can't name you names. In general, city employees.
You're saying that the mayor's statements about MAGA and QAnon are real in Santa Fe, and that somehow was attacking the city employees?
Well, it attacks everybody that he doesn't like. Who is he to say that, to bring up MAGA and all that? You know, he knows that this is anti-Trump city, and he's trying to muddy the waters by attacking the people in Santa Fe and saying that they're MAGA.
Mr. Hill, have you been following political campaigns lately? That's pretty mild compared to what a lot of people say about each other in political campaigns. We're not the police to monitor what comes out of people's mouths during the middle of a hotly contested political race. If we were, we'd never go home. We'd be sitting here every day. I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. Let me move on to violation number 3, the allegation that the mayor improperly retained this law firm, and that in particular, he was aware that Cristina Martinez, one of our commissioners, or actually board members, was a partner of the firm. I don't doubt that he knew that, and he also knew from experience that she was going to disqualify herself. So because she had the last time. So what harm was done that he hired a firm of his choosing with people who are knowledgeable in this area of law? Don't people have a right to choose their own attorneys?
Well, that brings me back so I can finish the remainder of my statement that I was trying to say in the beginning, which might answer your question.
Please.
And that is, Mrs. Martinez and her firm would fall squarely under this definition that I was talking about earlier. According to the agenda posted online for this board, they will be violating an amendment to the ranked choice voting system that will directly affect the upcoming election and Mrs. Martinez's client, Alan Weber, after this hearing. Mrs. Martinez literally cannot maintain the impartiality required by this board any longer. Let
me interrupt you. Are you saying she can't serve on any case or just this case?
She can't serve in any case. She can't serve in any case that they bring over here, because Mr. Weber employs these employees, and as we've seen the last two, I think this is the third, she's had to recuse herself.
All right, and my last question here on this violation alleged is, can you tell me, you're alleging a violation by the mayor of the code of ethics provision that prevents him from having a conflict of interest by representing private interests. So that's in there, and somehow by specifically, I think that he accepting monetary compensation from a third party for consulting with or representing or advising the party regarding any transaction with the governmental body. Has the mayor done that? Has he provided service to someone else and been paid for it?
Well, the mayor should have never asked this company because they know that Mrs. Martinez works for them.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from other board members? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Ms. Burlick, did you have a response?
No, just,
See you raising your
I
hand.
think Mr. Vigil is trying to talk and is on mute.
Mr. Vigil, were you trying to address the board?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I think
sorry.
I said it.
Thank you. Well, how would the board like to proceed then?
Is it time to go into executive session?
That's a possibility if that's what the board would like to do, or we can discuss any matter here or in executive session if that's the board's preference.
Well, I'm wondering if we shouldn't take up Mr. Simonich's invitation in his column and do this one out front. I don't have anything to hide. I'd be happy to talk about this and my concerns about this complaint, either now or either in the executive session or after, either way.
Chairman Miller, I would like to renew my motion to state that there is probable cause to to find that violation 1 may have occurred, a violation of the mayor of the ethics code of the sections alleged in the complaint by using this city event and city employees to participate in the city event and as clearly part of his campaign. And that's my motion.
Okay. So Ms. Amer, and I'll paraphrase, and if I don't get it right, please tell me, has made a motion that to find probable cause for violation of the first allegation in the complaint by the mayor of the sections alleged in the complaint by using a city event and city employees as part of his campaign. And to be clear, that does not include the mayor's campaign. Is that correct, Ms. Amer?
That's correct. I think that the intention of the code, the ethics code, by using the word public official would be to include city councilors or mayors that use city funds for purposes of their campaign.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure the motion was clear. Is there a second for the motion? I'm not seeing any second for the motion. Is there an alternative motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Covenant.
it seems to me that based on the representations made today and what we understand of the code, that the only colorable complaint is 17.7H, which at the end of it prohibits engaging in political campaigning while on duty for the city or using city fund supplies, vehicles, or facilities to benefit or assist in political campaign. It's in my view, the fact that the campaign advertised the public event that was available to the public is not sufficient, but I don't know the facts of what happened at those events. to be able to tell whether there is a colorable complaint about engaging in political campaigning while on duty for the city. I agree that a sitting mayor certainly has the authority and the responsibility to be present at public events that are generally available to the public. But there's a prohibition about engaging in political campaigning while at the event. It's a very fine line. I think we need more facts about what happened at those parks.
Okay, let me just to be procedurally, so we understand where we are. I want to get back to Ms. Amer's motion, and am I correct that I did not hear a second for the motion? And Ms. Kovnat, your comment is continuing discussion on the complaint. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I am not seconding the motion.
Okay. Okay, so with that understood, now on your comment, would the board anybody like to respond to that comment?
My concern, and I'm open to suggestions on this, is that I asked the question that raised this issue, of course. If are we going to create a new precedent now that, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, I'm asking, a new precedent based compared to what we've done in the last two such complaints? And are we going to keep this open so that more evidence can be adduced, even though it wasn't alleged in the initial complaint? And I think I oppose that.
Okay, my perspective is that we're looking at the complaint and looking for facts alleged that show improper campaigning at the event. Mr. Biederman asked Mr. V. Hill about that, and he said the mayor was campaigning. I don't know that I heard how or what campaigning was occurring there, but the complaint didn't, as far as I remember, did not allege any such facts. But any other comment from the board on this issue?
Well, just that we didn't put Mr. V. Hill under oath or any other.
Correct.
He was speaking as an advocate, not as a witness. So
That's
that
right.
makes sense. Yeah.
Ms. Kavanaugh, where the concern that you don't have enough facts, where does that lead you? How does that lead you to want to proceed with this complaint?
Well, one way would be to be consistent with our past practice and dismiss for the lack of the allegation of facts. Another way it would be to consider an investigation. I don't know how that would go, and so I'm of two minds.
Can I just add something here?
Yes, please.
I think it would be nice to have additional facts. I don't think we necessarily need additional facts. I think when you take data point 1, which is that the campaign requested people to come to this event, and then data point 2, that the event occurred with city employees to actually work at the event during work hours, and that the mayor actually was getting paid during work hours at this event. I think when you add 1 + 1, that equals 2, which is that the mayor was campaigning at the event and that the mayor was using city resources and city personnel to promote the campaign.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to that?
Yes.
These were events that were open to the public. they, as I understand the events, they were in a way a celebration of reopening the city after the pandemic. To assume that the mayor's presence at such public events, I'm informed, in fact, by the language of 1.7 on the misuse of city resources, which makes a distinction where use is generally available to the public. And I think to disable a sitting mayor from attending a public event by assuming without additional facts that it's a campaign event, I could not be comfortable with that.
Understood.
I would like to respond by stating that we're not assuming, because the mayor specifically promoted going to this. It wasn't like he just showed up there without any pre-hype.
And
So, I mean, I don't think we're assuming anything. We know that prior to those events, his campaign was touting them.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Amer. Ms. Lujan, I saw you with your hand up. And then I'll go to Mr.
Yes.
Biederman.
okay, I'm just trying to differentiate who is speaking. Now you just answered that. Thank you. And also, are we going to go into executive session? I think that's been what we've done in the past at this point. I'm not sure. I'm just asking the question right now.
Again, we can go into executive session on the motion by the board if that's what the board would like to do, but we don't have to. It's up to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Biederman, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, and I'm willing to speak without executive session as long as the board's willing. I think my concern is that this entire complaint has been focused on, and both this time and when we first saw it from the first complainant, has been focused on the advertising done by email by the campaign and encouraging people to come out to the event. But I agree with Commissioner Kovnat that we can't bar the mayor as a political reality from showing up at any events that the city runs during the campaign, because the campaign can go a year. That could be a quarter of the mayor's term. And we would be precluding a mayor or any councilor from attending these events if that's the case. I think that's far too extreme a caution against violating of this rule. I think that the question is, does the mayor maintain his independence, or let's be specific, did the mayor maintain his independence and appear at the event strictly as the chief executive of the city and not use it as an opportunity to campaign? We just don't have evidence to the contrary, and this complaint says nothing about that. It only says that the campaign encouraged people to come out. And that's why I'm concerned that this is just not sufficient to take it any further.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. So in regarding to the comments just by Member Biederman, if you're an elected official in your official role and you attend an official event, you can only be acting, or should only be acting, in your official capacity. If you have, as a candidate during a campaign cycle, an election cycle, advertised through your political campaign at an event that isn't where you are going to be acting in an official role, I think that is where we are in this issue. You cannot remove yourself as in that official role, and that's why you have to have some guidelines. And that's why we're addressing this today, because we need to differentiate those roles and how we are acting and moving within them. So I think asking for more information is what Member Covenant is asking for. I don't know, Member Covenant, what additional information would you like as we are having this analyzing and having this conversation?
Well, I would like
Okay.
to know whether the mayor presided over a public event that was for the benefit of the city and did so as the mayor of the city. The fact that it was in July and that we are in the middle of a campaign does not necessarily mean that he was engaged in political campaigning. And if we say that, that disables any sitting official from who's up for re-election, from participating, perhaps doing his or her job of presiding over a public event. I'm thinking about the teen center that was open. That was, if that was a public event, and the mayor was there and presided over, it was because it was for the benefit of the city, and that's as likely here in this case as the opposite. So that's where I am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Member Covenant, for answering my question. I just want to, say within, like I said before, I don't know that through our local ethics code that we've addressed those or delineated those guidelines, where in other ethics codes it has been.
Let me excuse me,
yeah.
Ms. Lana. I am actually in interpreting H 17.7H. I'm
Okay.
informed by E, which makes clear that there's a public official shall not use city services, personnel, or equipment for personal benefit, except when such use is generally available to the public. And that's the way I'm actually looking at these events. The use was generally available to the public, and so the fact that it was promoted by his campaign does not alter that reality. That's where I am on it.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Member Covenant. And that's what I'm saying. Like through other codes, we know that you can't have within a spatial distance. You cannot have a political campaign and an official campaign happen in any kind of in a specific distance. You have to. And I'm not going to quote where that, I don't know where that is exactly. I just know that exists from previous work on federal campaigns. So if I were to hosted or had a town hall in an official capacity for a candidate and a federal candidate, I couldn't have like 3 blocks down the way at a cafe then have a political rally there. You are using the exact language that we have available to us, and I'm saying that we don't have any additional language that differentiates those roles, and I'm trying to understanding where you're coming from and how you're looking at this. But I'm also saying that you can never, as an elected official, not be an elected official, and you need to be cognizant of your time and space as you're moving through roles. For instance, if you as an myself, I'll use myself as an example, were to go to a public event, a ribbon cutting, for instance, and I brought campaign signs, or I brought a badge or a T-shirt or anything, campaigning for myself as running for re-election, would that not create some kind of controversy or would I not be drawing a line there? I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm just saying that we're not making those delineations. And so this is what makes this hard, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, but to use your campaign and to promote a public event that you're going to be at as in a professional role thereafter, to me, raises questions here. Mr. Chair, Member Covenant.
Mr. Biederman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We don't know, neither party gave us the actual emails, the flyer basically. But I'm looking at the one that we got when the first complaint was filed on this. And now we're at the second complaint on this. And the flyer reads, Santa Fe cool downs. Join the mayor and fire department as they turn on the hoses for city-sponsored fun water play. It's warm outside and the Santa Fe Fire Department is here to help kids cool down with the city-sponsored Santa Fe Cool Down. Join the fire department on 2 Saturdays in July across the city as they turn on the hoses for fun water play, perfect for kids of all ages. And then it says where you'll find the fire trucks and Mayor Weber, it does say that in parentheses, ready to play at each of the following locations, July 17th at one park and July 24th at the next. And we hope to see you there. And then the next colored flyer says July 17th, Swan Park, July 24th, Franklin Miles Park. Fun starts at 11:30. Mayor Weber will see you there. This does say Alan Weber for Santa Fe. It is coming from the campaign. I have seen other campaigns take as a strategy, advertise events, public events that are not campaign events for the purpose of giving people access to public services. And I haven't ever run a campaign, but I've certainly been involved in them. And I don't think this is so unusual. I do think it was probably unwise because look what happened. I mean, this is now the second complaint that's been filed, and I wouldn't have recommended this, but I don't think there's a violation of the ethics rule because everything that's been criticized by the complainants has focused on this one piece of publicity, which came from the campaign, and all it did was promote a public event. And the mayor attended as is appropriate for the chief executive to do at a public event. So unless there is evidence adduced we've had 2 complaints, neither has said that anything occurred at the event that constituted campaigning, only that the mayor was there. And I don't even know that actually. And I'm just not ready to move forward with this complaint on that limited information after they've had 2 chances at it.
Yeah,
and I agree with that.
Okay. I think this has been a good discussion. Let me just make one comment that our role here today is to focus on the complaint and keeping in mind the comments just made by Mr. Biederman. I think they resonate when you actually pay attention to what is in the complaint, and the complaint alleges that the city put on these cool down events and that the campaign promoted the public event. And I think we've all looked at the complaint and looked for allegations of improper use of city resources and or campaigning by the mayor. And I still have not heard any allegations along those lines in the complaint. Ms. Lujan, you were about to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you, Mr. Biederman, Member Biederman and Member Covenant. I think in my perspective too, in my perspective as an elected official myself, is that you can promote public events and that's fine if you're, a campaign or things are happening and, part of our community and everything. But when we get into a place where, we are acting in an official role, in an official capacity, and using both those entities as a candidate, because we are in an election cycle, and you are promoting an event where you are going to be there because it says in the flyer, mayor, you are the mayor and you are the candidate. So this gets into a very precarious place, and especially for me and for others that are elected, right? So it's an issue because you have to understand what you're saying and what you're putting out there, because this isn't just some other candidate promoting a public event. it's the candidate that's also the official. So I think that's where I'm going with this, and why, you know, this is different, and I'm not arguing against what's in our policy right now, but this is really what this is what has brought this up, you know, for discussion and debate. If we need to get more information, if we need more witnesses or something like that, if that's what members are asking for, I can understand that. But that is just what I just want to be clear about, that this isn't just an arbitrary candidate promoting a public event. This is the candidate who is also the public official. So to me, that's what's at issue here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we haven't said much about violations 2, it really ain't much of anything about violations 2 and 3. May I just make a brief comment on those? Are we going to, or do you want to do this one at a time? Or?
You know, my thought is that I think the discussion on violation 1 may be reaching its conclusion, and given that, I think we should decide
okay.
question before us, which is whether the complaint alleges a violation, and whether we move on to you know, to have a hearing on this on the complaint. So you know, Ms. Amer made a motion earlier that was not seconded, but I think the time is right if another board member or any board member wishes to make a motion at this time on the first alleged violation.
I will move a substitute motion, my Robert's rules are correct, to dismiss the allegation of violation number 1.
And I second that.
Okay, a motion has been made to dismiss the allegations of violation number 1 by Mr. Biederman, seconded by Ms. Kovnat.
I think I misspoke. I said the violations. I meant to say dismiss violation number 1 as alleged.
Right.
Yeah, because it's the first claim is what I'm trying to dismiss.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, dismiss violation number 1
Yes, exactly.
and seconded by Ms. Kovnat. Is there a discussion on the motion? Ms. Lujan?
Yes, can you, Mr. Chair, can we say on what grounds we are, this motion is being made? Thank you.
Would you like me to do that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay. My argument is what I've said before, that I think this is the second time this has come up, and each time no one has said has described or alleged any misconduct by the mayor under the code section that was cited at the event itself. It is the obligation of the complainant to come forward with at least a colorable claim, and I don't think that the email that was sent out creates that. I think only allegations, viable allegations against the mayor for his conduct and campaigning at the city event would have in fact alleged a violation, and we didn't see that. That's why I think this is not an adequate statement.
And the seconder agrees.
Okay, thank you both. Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I think I ask for a roll call vote on the motion.
Member Amer,
No.
Member Biederman,
Yes.
Member Kovnat,
Yes.
Member Lujan,
No.
Chair Miller.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Okay, thank you, members of the board. And now let's address the allegations of violation 2 and 3. And we can take them in order or together, depending on the preference of the board.
Can I explain my vote?
Yes, please.
And
Thank you.
I'd like to explain mine after
Very good.
Commissioner
Okay.
Lujan.
Ms. Lujan first.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for having, and everyone here and bringing this forward. And I just want to explain my vote because I feel like through the discussion, we were recognizing or asking for additional information. And I feel that could have happened as well before dismissing entirely. And I wish maybe we'd have gone there, but I think that also we need to look more closely at our election codes, our local codes. And I think that we're not covering every aspect of how we are looking at how officials and candidates are acting. And as someone that has to move between those roles all the time, I think that it would be a pertinent thing for us to do and really address how some of these complaints could take us into more consideration of how we can look and improve our codes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And of course, that's a significant part of our mission is making recommendations. And I think we learn something with every election cycle, and we learn something with every complaint. And if there are ways we can improve the code and or our handling of complaints, by all means, I think we should. So thank you for that. Ms. Amer, you'd like to explain your vote?
Yes, I would agree with what Commissioner Lujan said. Maybe we should look at amending the code, because I also agree that it's very artificial to distinguish between the campaign and the campaign for mayor when the mayor is actually also the campaign for mayor. The two become almost indistinguishable. But I don't know if the code really addresses that issue. And so, therefore, I feel that a probable cause is not actually finding that the violation occurred. It would just go to hearing on whether or not a violation occurred, is my understanding. And therefore, I think we're being too technical with a probable cause determination. And we could go to hearing and adduce more facts, like Commissioner Lujan said. That being said, I just don't see how a campaign can say, please come to our campaign event, and then the mayor goes there while he's getting, paid public funds using public employees and public facilities, and then say, but I wasn't campaigning. It really doesn't ring true in my ears, at least. So that's my vote.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, no further comment on violation number 1. Let's discuss violation 2 and or 3. We've talked about them a little bit so far. Does the board have any comment, discussion, or preference on how to move forward?
Chairman, I will move to dismiss violation number 2 on the grounds that the allegation, and again, I agree with Ms. Froehlich's interpretation that only the mayor is subject to the code, the ethics code, not the campaign, to the city's ethics code. And in this case, the mayor, there's absolutely no allegation that any, and no credible allegation that any city employee was actually attacked by the mayor. It was very vague. There was no specificity. There's no way you could read the email to be aimed at city employees logically in terms of the way it reads. So I think it's and this is a protection against bullying in the workplace. So, and there's just nothing here that suggests any workplace was involved. So I move to dismiss that as well.
Okay,
I would second that.
Okay, can I just clarify the motion before you second it, Ms. Amer,
Okay.
that
Yeah,
I understand the motion to be that you move to dismiss violation 2. And then what you said subsequent to that was explaining the grounds for your motion, or is that all part of your motion, Mr.?
Oh, no, just dismissing allegation number 2 was, violation number 2 was the only. motion.
Okay, so well, the motion before the board is to dismiss violation 2. Ms. Amer, is that the motion that you wish to second?
yes, I wish to second that, and I would agree with what Commissioner Biederman just stated.
Okay, so the motion has been made by Mr. Biederman and seconded by Ms. Amer. Would the board like to discuss the motion? I'm not seeing anything, so I will call for a roll call vote.
Member Amer,
Yes,
member Biederman,
Yes,
member Kovnat,
Yes.
member Luhan.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to violation 3. Discussion or a motion on violation 3.
well, someone don't make me do all the heavy lifting here.
Well, my motion is to dismiss violation 3. There is nothing in the allegations that suggests that there's any, in my view, anything improper about retaining that firm, and certainly the integrity of Commissioner Martinez is not in question. She recused herself at every juncture. So I would move to dismiss.
Okay, the motion is to dismiss violation 3. Do I have a second?
Second,
Seconded by Mr. Biederman. Ms. Kovnat gave the grounds for her motion, her grounds for the motion. Does any other board member wish to comment or discuss the motion? Mr. Biederman?
I just want to add that, of course, I agree with that. And I want to add, I do understand that our code invites any person to file a complaint. And I understand that that includes non-lawyers and includes people who don't go to lawyers to help develop their complaints. But, you know, and notwithstanding that politics is a dirty business and a lot of people say a lot of things about people and get away with it because they're public figures. So there's no, you know, there's no restrictions on this legally. But I wish that people would consult with lawyers, at least talk to one. It just takes an hour or two, and just find out, you know, what it means, what these provisions mean. They're not, some of them are kind of hard to decipher. I get that. And you know, I've mentioned this before, and I agree with Commissioner Lujan that we probably need to do some rewriting. I think some of the rules are a page long. That's pretty dense. That's hard to get through. So I sympathize with that. But I wish people would be a little more careful about the complaints they write. And I understand violation number 1 was a viable claim. We just dismissed it by a close vote. But violations 2 and 3 were not. They were not even, they didn't even work in terms of matching the rule with the facts that were alleged. And that is, I think that's an unfair use of the privilege of coming to the commission that we give every citizen. So let's keep the commission for the purpose of working for the purpose of supporting real ethical rules, and not things like, you know, a bullying rule that doesn't apply to people outside the office, you know, applying it to people in the general public. And the only other thing I'd say is, growing up in the streets of New York, I got to say, if you can't dish it out, I'm sorry, if you're going to dish it out, you got to be able to take it. And to say that the mayor was bullying people after all the criticism that's been made of him is, I think, almost ludicrous. So these were frivolous claims, and they should not have ever been filed. And I hope that people will get the message.
Yeah, I'll call you back. I'm in this ethics meeting.
I hope people will get the message that we really want you to provide some viable claims that are well thought through so that we can take them seriously. Number one was such a claim. I accept that. Numbers 2 and 3 were not.
Thank you, Mr. Biederman. Any further comment or discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Member Amer,
The motion is to dismiss violation 3. I vote yes.
Member Biederman,
Yes.
Member Kovnat,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. V. Hill. Thank you, Ms. Furlick, for presenting your positions to the board, and thank you to the board for the discussion and careful consideration of the complaint.
Thank you for your time.
We are now on to item 6 of the agenda, which is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment?
Mr. Chair, this is Jim Harrington, Common Cause, New Mexico.
Yes, Mr. Harrington.
Thanks. Yeah, I have no comment on this item, and I do have a comment on the ranked choice bill, and I don't see a place for public comment on that. So I just
Do you want to hold your comment, and I can invite you to speak when we get to that?
Sure. I just wanted to make sure there would become public comment on that. Thanks.
Okay, and I see that's next. So why don't we, let me just see if anyone else has a public comment. I'm not seeing any hands raised, and so let's go ahead and go to item 7. And first we'll hear from staff on bill number 2021-23, just to amend ranked choice voting. Madam Clerk, is this your presentation or someone else from the city?
Chairman Miller, I don't know. I believe Marcos Martinez is also on this call or on this Zoom meeting. I apologize. We basically just wanted to provide an opportunity for the ECRB to see this. It's something that we discussed previously with this committee. And so really it was just an opportunity to bring it forward and let the members of the ECRB know that this legislation is going forward. It's also in the governing body meeting for tomorrow night. And the primary purpose is to make the city code consistent with the Secretary of State's administrative rules on resolving ties for ranked choice voting and elections. So really, I think the primary purpose of putting it on this agenda was to allow the ECRB to see the legislation in its final form.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Martinez, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you, Chairman Miller. I think that the city clerk ably represented our position.
Okay, thank you. So as the board knows, this came through our committee, and we made a recommendation, and that is the recommendation that is under consideration. So I guess we'll see over the next few weeks what the city, what action is taken on this matter. First, before I go to Mr. Harrington, who had comment, are there any comments or discussion from the board? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So Mr. Harrington.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm with Common Cause New Mexico, as you know, and we approve the bill as far as it goes, but we think it's just a partial and possibly temporary solution to, and that there's a simpler approach that would solve this problem once and for all. And I referred to it a couple of meetings ago. I probably should have pressed the point further with Marcos, because I see now it's sort of on a track to the council. But what the bill does is solve the particular conflict that we've noticed between the city ordinance on counting ranked choice votes and the secretary's rules. What it doesn't do is head off future conflicts of this kind. And this may not be the only thing we've noticed. You know, there may be something else. Excuse me, it is the only thing we've noticed, but there may be something else lurking in there that some creative lawyer for a losing candidate could make into a good faith complaint that would, you know, hold up the outcome of a city election. And there's also the possibility that the secretary may amend the rules in the future, creating new conflicts. As I mentioned a couple of meetings ago, there's a much simpler solution, which is to repeal this entire section of the code and substitute a simple statement that the city adopts the secretary's rules. That's what Las Cruces has done. This section of the ordinance was necessary when it was enacted because there were no state rules on the subject, and Santa Fe was about to conduct a ranked choice election and needed rules. But since then, the secretary has adopted a full set of rules. I think, and I know Mr. Biederman addressed this at that meeting, I think that there's room for argument that the Local Election Act is ambiguous on the question whether the secretary's rules preempt city law. And that means that whenever, if there is any conflict between the city law and the secretary's rules, you have the potential for a lawsuit that could delay the outcome of a city election. So it's a serious thing. And I don't think the city has any interest in maintaining this section, which, as it's been amended, is now, as far as we know, identical to the secretary's rules in every detail. But there is the possibility that we haven't noticed some difference in the wording that might be critical. And there is the possibility that the secretary will amend the rules. And there's no necessity for this section any longer because the secretary's rules cover all the issues covered by the section. And it would be Common Cause's recommendation to present a different bill that would simply strike through the whole section and substitute a statement that on matters of counting the votes in a ranked choice election, the city adopts the rules prescribed by the Secretary of State. I have nothing further. I do apologize for probably not pursuing this further after that discussion a couple of meetings ago. I probably should have gone with Christine or with Marcos and followed up, and because now I gather it's sort of a late stage. But I don't think it would, it's a simple idea I'm suggesting. It's not going to demand a major rewrite of anything. And I think it would be more effective to head off, not only to solve the immediate problem we've noticed, but to head off future problems. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Any response or additional thoughts from the board? Yes, Mr. Biederman.
Can I just ask a couple of questions for clarification? First of all, for those of you who have far more experience working with the city council than I, this is going to the city council, not to us, right? Because we approved it before that, right? So is there any reluctance on the part of the city council to delegate even kind of a minor and yet important issue like this to another agency and just, go with it, go with what the Secretary of State's office decides? Have we seen anything that suggests they would be reluctant to do that? Maybe Mr. Marcos Martinez would be able to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Biederman. The way I would answer the question is to say that one counselor was particularly interested and motivated to address this issue of tie voting before the election occurred. And so because that was his primary motivation, we didn't ask the broader question of whether there would be any reservation on the part of the governing body to adopt by reference the Secretary of State's administrative rules on ranked choice voting. But I do think that there's probably, I think I would have to read through all of the rules with a mind or an eye toward that question of whether it usurps, or if the governing body would feel that it usurps any of their powers regarding ranked choice voting in general. So I do think it's a slightly broader question. I definitely appreciate the position of Mr. Harrington. He's always provided useful advice on these matters to the governing body and to this board. So the way I would think about it is, if the ECRB were to undertake this question and examine the Secretary of State's rules, the governing body certainly gives weight to what the ECRB recommends. And so I would do it in that sort of stepwise fashion of first having this board consider all of those rules and whether there's any particular areas where the governing body might want to retain some of its differences or not. And then that recommendation, I would feel fairly confident, would probably be accepted by the governing body.
And this is on our agenda as an action item, right? So we could act on this today, right?
As I think Marcos was referring to, another problem we have in this area is the lack of clarity in the case law about exactly when it is the city can depart from a conflicting state law. And so, you always have that. I don't think the city has any interest in maintaining separate rules on this from the secretary. Except for the tie vote thing, which everyone agrees should be, where the rules should be made the same. We don't know of anything that would be done differently under the city ordinance than under the state law. And
okay,
so,
I'm sorry.
I think that's Mr. Biederman, to your question, if this is an action item or not,
It's information only.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
I suppose the rules permit taking action on items on the agenda, but I don't know that the board has the information it needs without, being able to compare look at the Secretary of State rule and the city ordinance side by side and make that recommendation. I don't know that we're ready to act on anything right now, but it seems like I do see the sense in what Mr. Harrington is saying. If that was the recommendation of the board that the city should take that course, it seems a good issue for us to consider. I'm just not sure if today is the day.
Well, let me ask this, if I may interrupt, Mr. Chairman. We are a month and a half away from an election. So if this were adopted by the city council, it would implement the secretary's current rule, and it would go into effect for the election, wouldn't it? Yeah, so we'd have an answer. I think we leave this to the big boys. I think we let the council decide at this point. It's an issue for them as to how they feel, because we have a three-way race for mayor and a four-way race for one city council position, and so this could be a real problem. And I don't think they want to just leave it. I suggest we see how it plays out and maybe reevaluate after the election. And I appreciate Mr. Harrington's comments. I think they're very valid, but we are late.
Well, I suppose the matter could be presented to the governing body and they could amend the ordinance along the lines of what Mr. Harrington is saying if they wanted to, correct?
Yeah,
So
that's what I'm saying. Yes.
maybe that's the more efficient way to approach it. If that could be done, I understand that kind of bypasses the ECRB to the extent that that's within our purview, but we did recommend a change to the ordinances to bring it into line with what the Secretary of State rules are. So I don't think that would be inconsistent with this board's action. Ms. Lujan, did you have your hand up?
I did. And then I think you covered it a bit there, and leave it to if it needs to be amended on a time, and with giving a date or a specific date of start, then I think that's where Mr. Chair.
And
Okay.
forgive me for using the metaphor I used. That was not intended to be offensive. Big boys
Oh,
for the count. I meant the higher level politicians. It was a shorthand. I use out of
Thank
habit.
you.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Understood. Okay, any other comment? We'll see what the governing body does, and if we need to take it up later, we will. Okay, thanks. Thanks for that. On to item 8, matters from the committee. Anything from the board? All right, I'm not seeing anything. Matters from the chair. Item 9, I don't have any matters to bring up. 10, next meeting, we don't have any pending complaints or pressing business as far as I know at this time, so I don't think we need to schedule another meeting. Does anybody disagree with that, or just, you know, it's so nice to get together every couple of weeks? Do we want to keep doing that?
Ms. Mihalchik, do you have anything in your inbox we should know about the way things are going?
Not at this time, Member Peterman, but,
Okay, maybe
I do keep you apprised immediately when things do hit my inbox. So if that's the case, I can work to schedule a date.
if you need a
Thank you.
cover, I'd be happy to supply it, just to put it on top of your. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, Ms. Lujan?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Yeah, I think that I think as we're waiting to hear from the counselors on adopting the Secretary of State's code, that would prompt us, or if we get another complaint or something like that, that would prompt us for our next meeting. Yes. Otherwise, maybe if we can after the election plan something. I think we've addressed some issues and some work that maybe the board can look at and address as we're working through these complaints. And I just think that a lot has come over these last few weeks. It feels like many months already, but it's only been a few weeks. I think that we keep meeting, but I think it's good practice to keep the conversation going, and so that we keep a working plan and things we'd like to address, Mr. Chair. And we have a really good board and really good members that do a lot of work outside of this as well. But I think the commitment for us and having us at present to take on these issues is important, and I don't want time to lapse that we won't be available to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Good, and I think that's right. If everyone can keep in mind the issues that have come up and where we see deficiencies in how things are done, or ways we could make it better, if we could remember those and maybe write them down and keep track so that we don't lose the benefit of our experience by just forgetting to address it. So I think that's that will be helpful. Okay, on to item 11. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Ms. Lujan and seconded by
A second.
Ms. Amer. A vote on the motion, please.
Yes, Member Amer,
Yes.
Member Biederman,
Yes, and thank you to the board.
Member Kovnat,
Yes.
Member Lujan.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Okay, thanks, everyone. We're adjourned, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all for being there.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you.